The historic handshake between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Trump at the inter-Korean border has led to the resumption of stalled Pyeongyang-Washington talks. Amid speculations that working-level talks will take place sometime this month, top nuclear envoys of South Korea and the U.S. are set to meet this week in Europe. Today, we go in-depth on where the two Koreas and the U.S. stand on the path towards the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula ahead of the planned working-level talks. For that, Dr. Chang-su of the Korea Research Institute for National Strategy joins me in the studio. It's good to have you back.
Yeah, good to be with you again. Thank you.
Amid reports that the U.S. might settle for a nuclear freeze, the U.S. State Department today has said that a nuclear freeze is not the end goal. It also said that Washington's main goal remains the complete denuclearization of North Korea. How do you interpret the remarks that came ahead of the planned working-level talks?
You might consider these two remarks contradictory with each other, but actually they're one and the same, as a matter of fact, because they're talking about the beginning of a long process, and they're talking about the end state of FFVD, final, fully verifiable denuclearization. There is no question about that. This is a long-held principle by the United States government, and it will not change anytime soon, even though there might be some alteration or division in looks, but this is a part of the long-time tactics vis-a-vis North Korea, I believe.
So it also said, the U.S. State Department also said that a nuclear freeze could be the beginning of the process of the denuclearization. Does this imply that the U.S. might consider step-by-step approach?
Yes and no. As a matter of fact, this kind of idea has been long speculated, not just 1 or 2 years ago. It was about 23 years ago when North Korea started nuclear testing and trying to make some nuclear weapons. They said how they're going to freeze or put a memorandum, or moratorium rather, on missile productions. So this has been a long-held process. And I think, so that's why, even though there may be some seemingly contradictory remarks by the U.S. government at one point, another with one government official by another, but actually they're one and the same. And this is the part of the whole process of denuclearizing North Korean nuclear weapons and the missiles, because WMD is very important. It's not just the nuclear weapons, but most important thing is the means of delivery, which is missiles, particularly ICBMs vis-a-vis the United States. And also the fissile materials, because North Korea will not stop in generating fissile material until they sign official treaty with the United States. So this is a very complex and very complicated process, and it will take a long time. So actually, Mr. Trump started with a very quick idea that I'm going to do this in one big sweep, and that is a big deal. But he also pointed out that it will take a long time. It should be divided. And one thing I think Mr. United States has learned from from North Korea is just North Korean tactics, dealing with one small stuff, step by step, to cover all stuff. So that'll maybe take 2 or 3 more years. I don't know, but so. Nothing contradicts each other. United States sticks to the principles of FFVD. No question about that.
What has been Washington's definition of a nuclear freeze?
Even though North Korea, Washington doesn't like the idea of nuclear freeze on the part of the North Korea, but they have become a little bit pragmatic, realistic. That is, North Korea should start freezing its nuclear weapons and their productions, as I pointed out, like fissile materials and with the production of the ICBMs. So that must be the entry of a long process. The final end state should be the final FABD, no question about that. So that's, again, my point is they are not contradicting each other. They actually wanted the part of the whole process, dealing with North Korean nuclear issues as a whole.
Now, one of the top U.S. nuclear experts, Jeffrey Lewis, in an op-ed published in the Washington Post, wrote that North Korea has no intention of abandoning its nuclear program, but U.S. President Trump seems to be fine with that now. And this has led to speculations that the U.S. might recognize North Korea as a nuclear state. Your thoughts on that?
Dr. Lewis made the kind of remarks, which is understandable, because the one thing he was really frustrated by lack of progress between the Washington and Pyongyang over denuclearization talks. So this is on his part, this is a sign of his frustration. Why is it taking a long time? And there is almost no guarantee, 100% guarantee North Korea will finally abandon its nuclear weapons. This is just speculation, and this is just hopeful, this hope that North Korea might, ends up with this kind of nuclear weapon states in return for the easing of the sanctions by the United States and also security guarantee provided for its resume. So that's why Lewis was disappointed, and so he said Washington might settle for this kind of nuclear free for the moment, but not for the entirety.
U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, Stephen Biegun, will meet with South Korea's top nuclear envoy, Lee Do-hoon, in Berlin on Thursday local time. What do you think will be the focal points of their meeting?
According to the media report, because two special envoys were meeting each other in Berlin, because one thing, Stephen Biegun is traveling in European countries. He was scheduled to brief to the NATO countries and also other EU countries on the progress or lack of progress of the denuclearization process talks with North Korea. So that'll be definitely on their agenda with Mr. Kim Jong-un. But they're going to be more focused on how they're going to really lead North Korea to really enter this whole process, because it might sound very risky for North Korea at the initial stage. But again, the economic prosperity will be guaranteed if North Korea really sticks to the FFVD. So that's exactly the whole point they're going to talk in Berlin, I guess.
Now let's shed some spotlight on North Korea's domestic political sphere. During a memorial ceremony marking the 25th anniversary of the death of North Korea's founder Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-un's sister Kim Yo Jong was seated just 4 seats left to Kim Jong-un. Does this indicate that she was promoted to a much higher rank?
I understand there might be some interpretation like she was, promoted to much higher ranking. But in terms of the sitting, it is the 5th to his left, Kim Jong-un left. But in terms of the whole sitting, she was ranked as 9th. So I think it's not so much. But one thing they really really stood out at this particular meeting, the 25th anniversary of his grandfather's death. Because 25th is a very important number for North Korea, 50th and 100 years. So 25th should be remembered to the whole North Koreans. This is the part of the Kim family. Kim Yo Jong is a part of family, what they called 백두 혈통, 백두, bloodline. So this is part of how they're going to solidify his power base in North Korea, Kim Jong-un and his younger sister, Kim Yo Jong.
Anything else in particular that was worth taking note of during the memorial ceremony?
It was long, and it was, actually it was, of course, the meeting was in the Pyeongyang Gymnasium, and also they moved to the Mansudae Hall of Fame. No, they call it the Kim Jong-un's mausoleum. Kim Jong-un's mausoleum, rather, and Kim Jong-il and Kim Il-sung. And there's a Palace of the Sun. I think this is really symbolized the whole basis of their power from the grandfather to father and son. One thing that really particularly stood out this time is there was a report about what a senior North Korean officials about what have they achieved for the last 6-7 years when Kim Jong-un has come to power. And this is because many people were really surprised at the turn of the 2011, 2012 turn, because there was all kind of speculation signs coming from North Korea. Some instability might occur in Pyongyang, but they really try to sue the people. Oh, I'm in control of the party and power and the military. Again, this is now 7 years onto his power. He said, again, I'm very in control of the whole party and people and the government with the support of my younger sister, rather, I'm sorry. So this is something that really stood out at the 25th anniversary of Kim Il-sung's death.
Meanwhile, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has made a very controversial and risky claim. He said that it's natural to suspect that South Korea may not be complying with international sanctions on North Korea, hinting that South Korea may be funneling imported semiconductor parts, which were also widely used in making weapons, into North Korea. On what grounds is he making such a claim?
I don't know what he was specifically referring to, because there was no specific background or ground for his claim, because we have pretty much stick to all the sanctions imposed by the UN Security Council, and we have also our independent embargo and sanction in North Korea. So there was no single case that really stood out to me that we really violate the UN Security Council resolutions or our independent security sanctions on North Korea. Maybe he was referring to some of the oils and some other. There was a case in North Korea as well, in South Korea as well. Several years back, we really banned the export of computer, for example, because computer has some semiconductors inside. So that may be something that Mr. Prime Abe was referring to, but I don't know exactly what he was referring to. But one thing, this is a very specific and trivial issue. What he was actually referring to, what he's trying to bring his attention to, or our attention to, is how bad our relation has become, and what was the reason behind this kind of deterioration of bilateral relations between Seoul and Washington, starting with the 1910 annexation of the Korean Peninsula and the 1965 the treaty on basic relations between the two countries, because there was something, even though they said all treaties and agreements have been null and void, and with this 1965 treaty, basic relation treaty, all things have settled. So this is the understanding of Japanese governments. This has been not just confined to Mr. Abe. All the previous statesmen, they said the 1965 treaty settles all the claims between our two countries. But with the new government in Seoul, with progressive government, they have a different interpretation of our past history. That's probably the reason why Mr. Abe also trying to issue with why South Korea came up with a different interpretation of past history, which he believes has already been settled between the two countries, 1965 and thereafter. So actually, this is not just a technical issue, but it's a political and historical issue.
Different interpretation always seems to be a big problem when it comes to global issues.
Yeah, it's not just different interpretation of the different, we call different perception of the history. This is the biggest problem between the two countries. Japan has different perception of history, past history rather, and South Korea has also different perceptions of history. That really baffle these countries, and we should be very close to each other in fighting against North Korean threats. That's why we've been talking about trilateral security cooperation for the last 10 or 15 years. And now we are at the bottom of our relationship. There is no hope for continued military or security cooperation between two countries. This is a shame, and I think something should be done for the two countries to come to the senses that this is really vital for our national interests, how we're going to challenge North Korean threats.
Now, North Korea, through its propaganda outlet, Beari, said that regardless of the past, if there is will to build genuine trust between Pyongyang and Washington, unimaginable things can happen. What do you think is North Korea's intent of publishing such thing?
To begin with, nothing with these remarks, because this has been always said by North Korean governments and its propaganda apparatus. Because if there is a genuine trust between the two countries, there will be a tremendous progress on something unbelievable. This is unless they provide some actions for their remark, for their word. This is just empty word. They might end up with empty words again. So I'm not surprised by these kind of messages, because nothing concrete, nothing substantial in their message this time as well.
Now, one last question. Do you think North Korea and the U.S. would make necessary concessions this time in order to resolve the nuclear deadlock when they meet for working level talks soon?
I wouldn't deny the possibility, that kind of possibility, because President Donald Trump really wants to make a breakthrough, because he believes this is not only good for his own re-election, but also good for American and Korean national security as well. So any breakthrough in this long stalemate will be a plus for Mr. Trump, and I think this will be shared by our government as well. Rather than just sticking to the same stalemate, we are looking for some, light after the long tunnel, for example. So even though this is just a beginning of a long process, let's begin with the start, with the process, rather than just waiting for the next moment, the next minutes, or next years. So in that sense, I'm positive that any meeting between the two countries and also with North Korea that will end up with a kind of plus for us, our security, positive, okay.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kim, for your perspectives tonight.
My pleasure, thank you.
And that does it for this edition of News in Depth. From all of us here at Arirang, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you right back here, same time tomorrow.